Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. And I'm going to pass this off pretty quick. I know what's probably going to be talked about first, but I'm just going to ask, what's the most memorable performance that you guys have over the last week? I'll give it to Gabe first. I know where he's going with it.
The king of Cleveland, the king of LA, just a kid from Akron, 37 years old. I thought he just owned one franchise. I thought he just owned the Raptors. I didn't know he bought the Warriors too. 56? Who was he playing with? No AD? Who else were they guarding? Malik Monk? I know you weren't guarding Russell Westbrook out there. Famous last words. Bro, Heat Chucks barely worked. They were working last night. This man is simply the greatest to ever do it. I mean, I don't know what else you can say. I mean, hey, I'm sorry. Did Michael Jordan own Steph Curry? I don't think so.
I'm not gonna take it that far. LeBron, he's the best that we've ever seen. In our era, he's the best we've ever seen.
Hey.
This man he really ages like fine wine, man. And it's a shame that this Laker team is just that bad because Bron has to do this for them to be relatively competitive. And if he's not doing this, they're losing by 20 points. Like, that's the craziest thing about it. But one of the 4 oldest players to drop 50 points in the game, LeBron James, is on that list with Jamal Crawford, out of all people, Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant. Only fitting. Hey,
LeBron got to be having high-tier back spasms after last night because that boy, he said he had one of these on. He had one of these. The backpack. That was ridiculous. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I cannot deny the greatness any longer. Skip Bayless, the ball is in your court.
He still found a way.
He still found a way all night last night. He still found a way.
He's been too busy beefing with Westbrook's. Was it his wife, right? Yeah. Or his mom or something? I know it was somebody related to Westbrook.
Yeah, that's what it was. He was complaining about the fact he only had 3 assists. That's what it was.
Yeah. Skip's a Hall of Fame
Nobody else
hater.
can score. Bro, imagine being the king. You're the king, and all your soldiers got pea shooters.
Playmaking. You can't make LeBron him hit him.
I'm sorry. People say, bro, LeBron doesn't have as many 50-point games as Kobe and Mike. He's simply not like that. Nah. If he wanted to be like that, he showed y'all last night.
Yeah, Bron is like that. He's so meticulous because I know y'all saw on his show on HBO, The Shop. I think it's on HBO or Showtime, something like that. But he was saying like how he feels disrespected when people don't mention him among like the best scorers ever because he's number 3 all time and he's probably gonna be number 1 by the time he retires. And nobody really mentions him like as the best scorer ever. They mention Mike, they mention Kobe, they mention KD and others, but they don't mention LeBron. And then he goes out and drops 56. I feel like he did that to prove a point. I really do.
He only continues to get better. Like LeBron came into the league, he was freight train, go to the rim. They said, man, he can barely work on the perimeter. Nah, he got that 3 a little bit later on. He got that in-between game. His post fade is among the best in the game. Like, and that's no hyperbole. A lot of this is hyperbolized because you got to do it for the content. But all facts, LeBron has one of the best fades in the game. And then I think an underrated thing is what's always been the biggest knock on LeBron's game? Maybe not the biggest, but one of the biggest, his free throw shooting. What happened last night? I think they were up 6 maybe, either 5 or 6. And LeBron made 2 clutch free throws to basically seal the game. I think that made it to 3 possessions at the end. Hey, what can you criticize? You can say, oh, he didn't pass last night. We've seen him pass enough times. What else? I don't know what else you can say. You just got to acknowledge the greatness. Is this going to flip the script for the Lakers? I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. AD's still out. It seems like the only other player that wants to play is Malik Monk. But, hey.
I'll give Stanley Johnson his credit, too. He can't score, but he puts in the work.
Yeah, but I think my biggest takeaway from this game we know LeBron's amazing. He's one of the best ever. What's going on with the Warriors? I feel like it's time to have that conversation, man, because I don't want to hear the Draymond excuses. I know he's out, but this team, I think even when he was playing, I still wasn't that much of a believer in them. I said many times, I think the gap between them and the Phoenix Suns is bigger than people think. So what do y'all think are the Warriors real contenders this year? Because I'm not too sure about it.
Yes. Devin, I'll let you go first, but yes.
I'm not sold, man.
I'm just gonna throw this out there just to stir the pot a bit. I'm not saying I agree with the stats as far as how things will continue moving forward, but D-Flow Hoops tweeted last night with Klay Thompson, the Golden State Warriors have a 52.6% winning percentage, with his 15th best in the league. Without him, second best in the league as far as record goes. Defensive rating with him is 15th, and without him, it ranks first. I'm not saying Klay's the problem, but since Klay has been back, at the very least, this team has not been playing the same. Now, again, part of that has been without Draymond, but I think it's fair to ask some questions about this team right now. Curry's slump has been a part of that, but they haven't necessarily been the same team. Andrew Wiggins, his production has been down horrendously since the All-Star break, and they need his offense on this team to be consistent. They need 18, 20 a night from him to have that level of offensive production. I think Kuminga's been good. I think Jordan Poole's still been fine. But without Draymond, this team really has to be firing on all cylinders, and it hasn't been. It just hasn't. Guys haven't been hitting their shots enough. Defensive intensity isn't there as much as it's needed sometimes from certain guys in the lineup. I think they can still be a contender, but I think this last stretch heading into the playoffs is important for them. They're going to have to start winning some games and get some confidence back. And Klay is going to have to start playing better as well. Simply put, he hasn't been good enough. He sure has come back from a serious injury, but he needs to at least hit his threes at the bare minimum.
Hey, Draymond, I'll just say he facilitates that whole offense. And in his own words, he said, like, I'm the guy responsible for making sure that Steph, Klay, when they used to have KD, probably at this point Wiggins, anybody else, he makes sure they all get their good shots within the offense to keep them calm, to keep them in rhythm, to keep everything flowing smooth. And I think without him there, it's really hard to integrate Klay back, because when everybody's trying to figure out their new roles, you got Jordan Poole still's going to want his shots, Andrew Wiggins, everybody with Klay, who's an all-star player, was before he went out, is coming back. He's going to take a lot of shots. And I think not having your facilitator there to really get everything balanced to the best of its ability, I think that's a very large impact. So I really feel like the numbers are skewed. And the fact that Draymond went out so soon after Klay came back, yeah, the defense being worse with Klay back. At the same token, that's when Draymond's not playing. So you got a top 3 defender in the league out. I mean, yeah, your defense is going to drop. And then you have a guy off of a major leg injury. Obviously, he's not going to be back up to speed right away. So, yeah, I mean, I think the numbers are very skewed, and I don't think that you can really make big judgments off of a Draymond-less Warriors when we saw how good they were with him. And really, Curry hasn't been as bad recently. Like last night, he had a pretty efficient 30-piece, which if everybody else is firing and the offense is flowing, I think 30 from Steph is definitely enough.
Yeah, it's just I know Klay hasn't played with Draymond yet really this season. I mean, because the game he came back, Draymond was basically – he was hurt at that point, but he just wanted to be on the court with Klay when he came back. So it is tough because Draymond is such a vital piece of this team. But you would still think this team with all this championship pedigree, they would still be able to at least weather the storm without Draymond Green, even as impactful as he is. But they haven't been able to do that, and they've really looked like a bad basketball team. They've been losing to teams that they should not lose to, teams that they're better than. And what I think, Devin, you mentioned before, like they're 2-8 in their last 10 games. That's not Warrior basketball, no matter who's on the court. So it raises a lot more questions about this team. Like, I'm not as confident with them going into like a 7-game series against the Phoenix Suns as maybe I was early on in the season, because I just think the Suns, when healthy, are a much better team, much more well-rounded. And you kind of see that even though they're missing CP3, Devin Booker, they're still playing productive basketball. And the Warriors are not at this point. And it's tough because trying to integrate Klay Thompson is not an easy thing because he's missed 2 years of basketball. He's going to need his 20 shots. And then it kind of takes away from, like, maybe Wiggins that's throwing his rhythm off. It might even be throwing Steph's rhythm off too. So it's a lot to ask. And then getting Draymond back, they're going to have to reintegrate themselves together. It might be a lot to ask for this team with just, not a lot of basketball left in the regular season.
Let me ask you guys this. To me, a contender, I think, to me, that's like you're a top 5 team in the league. Because if injuries fall your way and, like, seeding falls your way, like, you get enough luck, you can be the 5th best team in the league and win a ring. Realistically, I feel like we've seen that happen plenty of times. And so, yeah, I would agree the Suns are better. I feel like that's just obvious. But then that's also a team where their top 2 players aren't playing right now. And obviously they're still getting wins. But, like, that's the regular season. And when they're keyed in on you more in the playoffs, game planning for you, like, your own stars not being healthy, like, that's going to factor in. And even to go away from the Suns comparison, because obviously when both are healthy, it's like, I feel like that's not a valid comparison to make right now. But comparing them against the other top teams, if you say Grizzlies versus Warriors, yeah, Draymond's playing, which I assume he will be by that point. I'm taking the Warriors in a 7-game series. The Grizzlies are explosive, but they're young. I mean, I feel like the safe bets there is the Warriors. And then you go over to the Eastern Conference and see maybe some of the other top 5 teams like Philly. Philly's still a question mark. Their sample size is so small playing together. I'm really high on them right now, but
I'm actually
you can't
super bought in. I'm super bought in on Philly now.
I'm very high on them. And so, but to me, I could say the only teams that I realistically see taking down the Warriors in 7 could be Phoenix and Philly. Maybe Milwaukee. Maybe.
I think the Bucks could.
Yeah.
But
I even think
that's probably it, though.
Below the Suns, 76ers, and Bucks, I'm not taking the Heat over the Warriors. I'm not taking the Nets over the Warriors the way they are right now. Not taking the Bulls, not taking anybody else in the East. I don't take the Jazz seriously as contenders. I'm sorry. It's the same team that hasn't been able to get over the hump for the past 5 years. And anybody below that, I would not call a contender. So, I mean, if you said if you said the contenders are the top 5 teams in the league, really, if somebody else takes out the Suns, if the Suns get upset in, like, the second round or something, I think the Warriors could go to the finals easy.
I don't see that happening.
If we never know what happens with the Sixers, if the Sixers lose, I can see the Warriors winning it all. So I think the fact that they have a realistic path to the championship makes them still a contender in my eyes.
That's fair. I still think, like, of course, like, they're going to be in the mix, but it's just not like – this is not just a Warriors-type team in my eyes. And even when they get to the postseason, they got guys that have never been there. Wiggins has never been there, or he's been there once. Like, he doesn't really have that much experience. Jordan Poole has not been there. They're relying on guys that have not played playoff basketball or a lot of playoff basketball. And they're going up against teams that, have a lot of experience. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting for sure. They'll still have just as good of a chance because they have that core group. And I'm hoping Klay will get his rhythm back. Draymond will be back healthy. That's going to be a big lift. But I'm just not as confident in this team, man. I'm just not as confident as I would be in a typical Warriors basketball team.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Another thing to think of, too, as of right now, they'd be playing Denver, which presumptively would have Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray back. I still think Golden State wins that series, but that's probably not comfortable. It's probably going to go deep. The Warriors are going to get more tired. It's another thing to play into effect. Like, I don't think any series against Denver, even if Jamal and MPJ are just kind of getting back into it, is going to be an easy one. So, like you said, Tyrik, like, Golden State losing this many games in a row, having this long of a poor run of form, just isn't typical for them, Draymond or not. And so Draymond coming back certainly will help, but there's something deeper than Draymond. I don't think Draymond coming back fixes all of what's going on right now.
Yeah, man, we'll just have to see. It does suck but I mean, a lot of teams are dealing with injuries right now, so you got to adjust. You got to be able to win games without certain guys. So we'll see if they can get out of this slump, man. But I guess losing LeBron when he dropped 56 isn't that much of like a thing to hold your head down about because Braun had an historic night. So
Sometimes Braun just does that. I know that all too well, unfortunately.
we all do.
We all do. Let's talk about the
I guess the
Grizzlies.
thing, I'm sorry, real quick. I just want
Yeah.
to say my last thought. The reason I'm really not too crazy concerned is just because of the teams they've been playing in this stretch. Now, literally, besides the Lakers, who they did beat like a few games ago, and then lost this game with LeBron dropping an unreal game, they've been playing a solid competition. Like, they lost by 1 to the Nuggets, had 2 close ones against the Mavericks that they came up short in. But then, like, they played against the Trailblazers, and they blew them out by, like, 40. And so they've been playing against good teams that are playing really good ball right now.
True, but these are the teams that you're probably going to see at some point in the postseason. So you want to be able to beat those teams when you can, honestly, especially when it comes to seeding and all that. Of course, you should beat the Trailblazers by 40. I mean, the Suns beat them the other night by 40 without Booker or CP3. Like, you should beat that team. Just saying.
All right. I'm good to move on now, though.
Okay, we got to talk about the DT seed in the West.
Yeah, for sure.
So we got Phoenix. We know what they're doing. Golden State are doing their thing. Hopefully they can get back on track. But how good are Memphis legitimately heading into playoff time? Jaw's doing his thing. Bane's been in a bit of a slump, but he's been great. This team's been the surprise of the NBA, but are they actually contenders? That's the question.
Let's push that narrative. Let's push that narrative right now.
Jaw's an
Ja
MVP
Morant,
candidate.
He's top 3. Hey, he's top 3.
Honestly, he might be. We forgot. He just dropped 50 earlier this week. Like, I honestly forgot about that.
This week's been wild for big performances.
Wild.
Absolutely wild.
All I'm saying is Embiid has 2 other big-time scorers next to him now. His numbers might fall off a little bit. They might fall off a little bit.
I don't know.
The East is so close. The East is so close. Giannis could drop to the 6th seed at any time. He could drop to a 6th seed at any time. Jokic is a 6th seed right now. Ja is really close.
If the Grizzlies stay top 2, just say they stay top 2, he should get a lot of consideration because his jump this season is crazy. He'll probably win most improved just because like his jump has been like that, but he should really be in talks for MVP. I don't think that's too far-fetched to say. And it's crazy because the race kind of fluctuates every single week because guys have a big game, guys have a bad week. Like DeMar just had kind of a off week. So he's dropping in people's rankings. Ja's slowly rising up, and he's been on the rise all season long. It might be time to push the narrative. I'm with you, Gabe. It might be time to push it.
I'm just going to be honest. Like, Giannis is having a great season. It's definitely an MVP caliber season, but I think that voter fatigue is working against him so heavily, which is weird because he didn't even win the award last year. But it just feels like voter fatigue is super against him. And it's like people just don't want to vote for Giannis, which I get because, honestly, the Bucks were not where they should have been for a lot of the season. But he, as an individual, has still been great. And as of now, they're literally in the 3 seed and half a game away from the 2 seed in a very competitive conference. So he definitely has a case, but I just feel like he won't win it because of that fatigue. And so to me, that really leaves Embiid and Ja at the top. Jokic has all the stats in the world, but I feel like it's not enough mixed with his relatively low level of popularity relative to other stars to push him above Embiid or Ja.
I feel like Giannis is in a tough spot where between voter fatigue, the Bucks have already got a ring, so there's not as much as like, oh, let's hope that Giannis can do something different this year to get a title. Smaller market. I feel like Giannis is going to have to do just something above and beyond he's ever done in his career to get that type of MVP recognition again. Like, this guy's going to have to start shooting like 37% from deep to get recognition. He's very much should be in that conversation for sure, but I think there's just a lot of factors working against him right now where it's like when LeBron just stopped winning MVPs after he'd won multiple in a row. Like, LeBron was probably and was the best, still the best player in the league, but eventually he just wasn't getting it. Sure, Curry probably deserved a few of those where he was just the best player in that season, but LeBron probably should have had a couple more, but ultimately it's like, what more is LeBron going to do to build his MVP narrative this year? It just wasn't there. So I think Giannis is going to run into a similar problem. Not to say that he's going to deserve all of them moving forward, but I think he's definitely going to struggle to get multiple MVPs moving forward because of that.
Well, I think after the Heat days, LeBron kind of started to take the regular season a little bit easy, had a little bit of like load management. And really, I don't think he had a great MVP case just because he really did his talking in the playoffs. I don't think he had another great like MVP case until 2018. And even then he did finish second. And James Harden had a crazy season that year. He definitely deserved that. 1 seed. We saw how great that team was even into the playoffs, so it was legit. And he had like 30-point games in a row. And so it's usually just whoever – if you secure like a top 2 seed and have great stats, that's usually an MVP season. I think Giannis will definitely achieve that a lot more. It's just once you set the bar, you got to go beyond what you set. And the fact that his team won MVPs, winning with the team winning like 60 games – like you basically got to break your own bar. It's like LeBron had 3 MVPs already, but 12-13 was the best season of his career up to that point. And so until he breaks what he did before, I don't think he'll win another one. But do I think he can break what he did before? Absolutely. It's just not this season.
Yeah, but to answer the initial question, I think the Grizzlies can make some real noise, but I have a feeling that their lack of experience is really going to end up catching up to them at some point in the postseason. I could see them winning a series in the first round for sure. But then second round, depending on who they match up with, maybe it's the Warriors, that experience just might catch up to them, the lack of experience. So I don't know. I think they'll make a nice little run, but I don't think they're like true contenders. I still feel like they're like a year or 2 away from that, even as great as this season has been for them.
Yeah, the best is ahead of them. They're still young. Like for guys, as far as vets with NBA experience, it's like or playoff experience, it's like Steven Adams, and then it falls off pretty quick. Like it's a young team. Sure, they had a bit of a run in last year with Utah, but this is just another step forward. If they get bounced comfortably in the second round, it's not a bad thing for them. No one expected them to be anywhere near where they are this year. This is a team that's a few years away from being a contender, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're way ahead of schedule. Jaw's only going to get better. Zaire Williams is continuing to look better throughout the year. Desmond Bane has been way better than a lot of people expected and ahead of schedule. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been good. Like, there's so much to look forward to on this team. Everyone's young. They're good. They don't need to do anything special this year. I don't think they will, but a couple years from now, Chris Paul gets older. He's not with the Suns. Who knows what's going on in Golden State? Memphis might be on top of the West for a while.
Hey, if Ja matches up in a 7-game series with Chris Paul, Steph Curry, or Luka Doncic, and somehow manages to outplay them during that stretch, he's going to put himself in a lot of conversations. A lot of conversations.
I think there's an argument that he might be the best point guard this year. I think there's a legit case for that.
Yeah, definitely. And he's still only 22. Like, that's the crazy thing.
Crazy.
This guy's 22.
The only thing I get worried.
He's a year older than me. Like, what?
The only thing I get worried about, like young teams having so much success early on, I feel like it sets the expectation so high for them, and sometimes they don't achieve it. Like I've seen it with the Celtics. Like when they made that conference finals run in 2018 with a rookie Jason Tatum, young Jaylen Brown, everybody's like, "Oh, this team's going to be on top of the Eastern Conference next season." And then the expectation was set so high that they did not meet that expectation. And the Hawks are kind of dealing with the same thing. They made the conference finals last year a little prematurely, and now you see them struggling this season. So I hope that doesn't happen with Memphis, but I don't think it will, because I think they're so well coached. They're so good at developing young talent that they're only going to get better. And, you know, a guy like Zaire Williams might turn out next year to be like a super gem and just explode like we've seen Desmond Bane do this year. They just do that with guys. Like, guys develop so well in that system. So I think they won't run into that wall that some other young teams have in the past. I'm hopeful of that.
Memphis being a small market team might help that as well. They'll probably have less media attention, less expectation. Internally, they'll probably have it, but it's not like a Boston where it's a bigger market. You have those expectations from the media. It's a bit easier to deal with, unless people continue to push the jaw narrative in the media, which might happen, and, well, then that changes. But as of right now, small market, a little bit less expectation.
This team just terrifies me so much because I feel like they're in one of those positions where they're a young team having success, and I feel like they're going to think, oh, we're a piece away. And then I feel like they might buy in too early, and they might mess around and trade like a Brandon Clark and like a DeAnthony Melton and a couple pieces to maybe secure like them and like one other like high tier player to trade for like a Bradley Beal or something, or like not exactly that, but just the general notion of I feel like they might sacrifice a little bit too much depth to try and buy in for a star or something. They just give me kind of that vibe. They're going to be like, oh, we have that success. And I really hope they don't do it. And I really believe that this front office will make the right decisions because they've clearly done a great job with this rebuild and building this team. But please, if anybody from Memphis is listening to this, do not make a trade and buy in too hard because the depth of this team is really what makes them great. Ja Morant is an amazing player, but we saw even when he was out, they still played great. And even when Ja plays great, the players around him still play off of him so well. They really don't rely on a bunch of star power. They just rely on having a lot of great players that just fill their roles perfectly. And I really hope they continue to do that.
Yeah, I agree. They have such a good culture. As you mentioned, their depth is so good. If they want to make a move around the fringes, I could see that because they have like 13 solid rotational NBA players right now. So if they wanted to make a move around the fringes, they could. But they only got 2 guys up on contract at the end of the year, Tyus Jones and Kyle Anderson. Most of this group's going to be back. Like you say, doesn't make that much sense to make a big splash right now. What you have works. The culture around this team is what makes it so good. The defensive intensity on this team makes it so good. They don't have to do anything drastic. They have the pieces here that they need as far as the core standpoint goes. You have Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. around your superstar and Ja. They got what they need.
So something I want to get into because it's happening literally right now as we're recording this. Jason Tatum has just tied the record with Larry Bird for the most 50-point games in Celtics history. Jason Tatum is only 23 right now. I know maybe a little bit more score-heavy of an era than the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Still very impressive to get it done this fast. With that, I want to ask, because I feel like there's a lot of debate about this. What tier of player, like when it comes to young players, is Jason Tatum on? I want you to start with this, Tyrik, because you're the Celtics fan in the building. But I
What do you
feel like
mean
there's a
by
lot of
that?
discourse. Like, is he like MVP potential? Is he just perennial All-NBA? Is he like a guy that can be the number one on a championship team? What kind of level?
I think
How
he
good
has
is Jason
MVP.
Tatum?
I think he has MVP type talent. I think when he's at his best, like obviously, scoring 50 points, that's outrageous. But when he's playing his best, like how he has like over like the last 10 games, he's been really good. Really efficient, been playmaking better. His shot selection has been a lot better. When he's playing at that level, definitely an MVP caliber type of guy in my eyes. I think he has all the potential in the world to win multiple MVPs. I think he's that kind of guy. It's just about him putting it all together and staying consistent with it, which we don't see a lot from him. I think he can get to that level, and he's right up there with like the best of the young players. He's up there with a Luka, Trae Young's, the John Morants. He's right up there on that type of tier. I think he needs to just separate himself, man, because I think he has the type. I think he's the more talented out of the group. It's just a matter of, like I said, putting it all together, which we haven't seen consistently from him for like a full season. But maybe this is the stretch that can, propel him into that mold.
Yeah, I agree. It's putting it together for Tatum. He's shown that upside and that potential to be an MVP candidate type guy. Whether he reaches it is just in question. And he's still super young. He's got a lot of time to put it together. I ultimately kind of see him as a borderline superstar type guy who's sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't, depending on how good he's playing. I'd love to see him prove that wrong, and he just goes to the I'm more consistent, I'm always a superstar type guy. I just haven't seen that from him yet. And as much as he is young, I don't know if I can give him the benefit of the doubt. I have him. I have my thoughts on him as a borderline superstar. I think he's a top 10 guy in the league in his prime. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Guy's going to have 10 plus all-star appearances if he stays healthy. I just don't see it currently with the level of consistency that I've seen where he's going to be a consistent top 5, top 3 MVP candidate.
See, because to me, I feel like the way he plays and just like the things I see this man do, I really feel like he is on the same tier as a Luka or a Trey or a Booker or a Mitchell, any of like the young stars, Ja, any of the ones that are going to be like running the league for the next like 10 or so years. I feel like those might be like the top 6 to 8 and really might fill most of that top 6 to 8 like list for a lot of the next decade. Now, I don't consider Giannis a young player, but he'll probably be up there in the top 5 for at least the next probably 7 or so years. Maybe that's a little long. At least Giannis will be in the top 10 for at least that long, I believe. But Tatum has just been so like I feel like when the moment's there, he is just always on to me. Maybe I'm a little high on him, but like seeing what he did against Brooklyn last year, the team obviously did not have that much success, but Tatum was out of his mind.
When he's at his best, it's really like a sight to see. Like he has one of the deepest bags in the league on the offensive side of the floor. And I think his defense has actually been a lot better. I don't think he gets a lot of credit for his defensive side, but he's been really good on that side of the floor this season. His playmaking's improving slowly, but surely he's getting there. He's had games where he's had like 7, 8 assists this season. He's been playmaking a lot better. Like we said, man, it's just a matter of putting it all together consistently. If he gets the consistency down, he's going to be like a top 5 player in the league easily once he steps into his prime.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's honestly the only thing that needs to be done. If he can have that level of consistency where those brilliant moments happen on the regular, then there's no doubt he's an MVP candidate type guy. We just need to see it happen. But if that happens, his playmaking improves a bit as well. It's going to be scary.
It's just sometimes the lows of Jason Tatum is just so bad. Like he'll go 8 for 30. I'm like, bro, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's not like the lows are 6 for 15 for 17 points. It's
8 for 30, 9 for 32. It's just terrible. And then my biggest issue with him is like closing games. Like he's had so many struggles closing games because he likes to take the pretty tough hero ball shots. Instead of just putting his head down trying to get the best shot, he takes the pretty shots. And when they go in, it looks very good. But when they miss, it looks terrible. So that's just my only thing with Jason Tatum. But this season, I mean, as bad as it started for him, he's definitely much improved. I would love to see his numbers since like maybe Christmas because I feel like he's been putting up some crazy stats.
I just think the expectation is so high for him, given the way his career started, that I feel like he's judged a little more harshly than a lot of the top players. I feel like when Tatum plays poorly, I feel like it's a lot more talked about when like the rest of this kind of group of the top young players like maybe put in a not so great performance or have an off night. So with that said, it's like, I feel like in like maybe like 2024, I feel like he could take an MVP home. Let Boston secure a 1 seed with Tatum as the number 1 option. I really feel like he might turn some heads, especially in a conference that'll still have Embiid and Giannis and a growing Cavs team. Hopefully LaMelo and Charlotte gets things going. The future of the East can be really good, and it's like Tatum pulls that out. This dude is different to me.
I mean, the fact that this team is potentially a home court advantage team in the first round compared to how they started the season, a lot of that is to do with Jason Tatum. A lot of it.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, Tyrik, his defense is super underrated. He definitely doesn't get anywhere near enough credit for that. Everyone likes to focus on the offense, but really good defensive piece. And yeah, no, he's super important. If he fully can stay consistent There's nothing stopping him but himself. He's got all the talent and potential in the world, no doubt.
I think so too. Do y'all want to guess the top 10 scoring leaders? Just a little fun, little trivia that we can do.
Top 10 scoring leaders. I don't think I've looked at that all year, so that sounds like something
I
I would be
haven't either.
terrible at, but sounds like a great time.
Aren't Embiid and Giannis like battling for the scoring title?
Joel Embiid is
those
number
two,
1.
and LeBron is up there at number 3, I think, or something like that after last night.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the top 3. Joel's number 1. He's 0.1 ahead of LeBron and Giannis. 29.5 for Joel. Giannis and Braun 29.4. So that's a very close scoring race. This really might go down to like the last week of the season, honestly. So y'all got the first 3. That's pretty easy. 7 more names to go.
Surprised. I would not be surprised if the top 5 is rounded out by Trae Young and DeMar.
DeMar's number 4, 28.1. Trae Young, 28 points per game. And number 5, okay.
Hey, I just got the top 5 in order.
There's not really like any super surprising names in here.
I feel like Steph and KD, if KD counts, if it's just per game, it doesn't count missed games.
KD does not count.
Jaw's got to be
too many games.
Jaw's got to be 6 or 7.
Jaw is 7. Steph is 10. And
Steph
he's on the verge of being out of the top 10. Devin Booker's like 0.2 behind him.
And we were just talking about Tatum. I feel like Tatum has to be in the top 10.
Tatum's number 8, 26.5. 26.5 points per game.
Well, we're missing 6 and 9?
6 and 9. Yep, 6 and 9.
Luka. We did not say Luka Doncic yet.
Luka is number 6, 27.8 per game.
Dang. Who is number 9? How much does Steph average?
25.8.
26. I doubt Beal counts.
No. Okay, this guy.
He's a scorer.
This guy's he's a bucket getter. He's one of the best playoff performers in the league.
Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell,
bro.
Great guess. 25.9.
Damn. And I'm guilty of this too. It's just so hard to even think of Donovan Mitchell when you're thinking of things because Utah is just so off the map. But Donovan Mitchell is great. I got to give Donovan Mitchell my flowers every single time I can because the man is he could be a superstar. If he was in a bigger market, I really believe people would be talking about him exactly how they talk about John Moran right now.
I think so too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm guilty of not watching a lot of Utah basketball either because it's the same thing I've watched for the last 2-3 years now. Like I'm not seeing anything different anytime I watch Utah.
Yeah, I know
what I'm getting. I know what they're gonna do. They're gonna funnel everything to Rudy. Donovan's gonna carry the offense.
I tried to watch them this week and I just I couldn't do it. Like it's just like, it's just Donovan's showtime for sure. But it's like everything else, I just and I like Mike Conley. He's one of my favorite guards in the league. I don't dislike Rudy. I know Rudy's impact I know what it is, but it's just like I just don't like watching this team, man. Which maybe I'm being ungrateful because they're still a very good team. But man, I just cannot watch them night in and night out.
They just need to make a change. I don't know if they can, but it's like the only change they've made is getting off of Joe Ingles, and it really wasn't for much.
Yeah, once they extended Rudy, they kind of just locked themselves in until Mitchell either re-signed or leaves.
Which is, it's like you can't you can't fault them for that, just like how you can't fault them for paying Mike Conley a lot of money this past offseason because it's like, what else are they going to do? They're not going to draft. They're not going to be able to draft anybody because they're not going to have a top pick. Nobody's going to go there that's a significant free agent. Kind of have to, give Rudy the super max extension. You got to give an old Mike Conley a lot of money to stay. So they're just in a tough situation, man. And I think they're a team, kind of like how Gabe just said they're the new Portland. They've just maximized everything that they could do. And this group is not going to – I don't think this group is going to get, them to the promised land, which is ultimately a championship.
It's just the small market struggle. It's like if you draft well enough, you can get 1 or 2 stars, and then usually getting that third really good guy. I feel like you kind of get through a trade with some other pieces you have. It's like That's pretty much what Milwaukee did. It just got them over the hump because Giannis is a level above
Same with the
most
Raptors
other
getting Kawhi.
superstars. The Raptors got Kawhi. They had like Kyle and Pascal played great that year, so I would consider him like a second star for that point. And they made the traded DeMar and some pieces for Kawhi, and that's how they won it. I mean, not that Toronto's a small city, but it's hard to get free agents because of the national boundary. But yeah, like things like that, it's like if the Mavericks ever get a big star to put alongside Luka, it'll probably just have to be they draft well if they make a trade. And that's really the name of the game. I really don't know if Utah can get much better though, because it's like they have their two stars, they have their third guy they got. Donovan Mitchell is great. I just said he was great, but is he Giannis level? Probably not. So it's like, does that take you to where you want to be? Once again, probably not.
And they don't really have that like elite second guy on offense either. Like it's not like you have Giannis and then you have Middleton or even just one of a Middleton or a Jrue Holiday. Like Mike Conley is good, but he's not the Mike Conley we used to know 4 or 5 years ago. Like he's not going out getting 20 a night, making a ton of clutch buckets down the stretch as much as he was. After that, like there's fine pieces, but they don't really have anyone at that type of level around Donovan that they can really rely on come playoff time. So it's not a direct comparison. I know it's a bit unideal because of Mike Conley being on both teams, but based on being a small market and kind of where they are stuck at, it almost reminds me of Memphis with Randolph and Marc Gasol and Mike Conley, where they were a really good team. They did get in and around some conference finals, but they weren't quite good enough to really be a top-tier contender. I'd say that Memphis team was probably slightly better, but they're just a small market team that doesn't really have anywhere else to go. This is just the best option they have.
That's a great comparison. I want to ask you guys, what would be that ideal second guy to Donovan Mitchell? Would it be a wing or maybe an upgrade over Mike Conley, which is tough to say? Or, what kind of second option would be ideal for this Utah Jazz team?
This is going to sound so random, but, bro, if the Celtics ever split up the Jays, bro, if I saw Donovan Mitchell and Tatum next to each other, that would be crazy.
Oh, that's OD.
That would be crazy.
Mitchell would be the second option at that point.
Yeah.
That's
wild.
I feel like they're a 1A and 1B.
Yeah, probably.
I feel like they're a 1A and 1B. And I would like him with a forward. I think he can work with a good big man. I wish he had one with a little bit more offensive capabilities just to take the scoring load off of him, because I think if you have a second star that plays can take some of the scoring load off but is also more of a defensive impact, I think that's the perfect thing. And that's why I say a guy like Tatum that's has the scoring but then also has that defensive impact as well. I really like that. Something that's probably not very likely to happen as well, him with a Bam Adebayo, I feel like would be really good, because Bam has more of an offensive game than a Rudy, and he's still a great defender. I feel like something just tells me they would mesh really well together, especially the way I feel like they can elevate their games in certain situations. I feel like Bam's a guy who can really elevate at certain times. So that's a duo I'd like to see. And then something that was probably even less likely, Mitchell and Zion would be really fun. If Zion got out of New Orleans, but the thing is, if Zion got out of New Orleans, he's not going to a smaller market. So that's why that's impossible pretty much, unless they both sign somewhere as free agents, or Zion got traded somewhere and Mitchell just left in free agency. But that's probably the least likely scenario out of all of them.
I think realistically, I think Jeremy Grant, I feel like we spoke about this before, but I feel like he would be kind of perfect because he's a little more low maintenance. He can defend. I think he could thrive as a second option in Utah.
Is he low maintenance anymore though?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like he's not low maintenance. The way he's doesn't want to leave Detroit because he doesn't want to go back to a lower option.
True, but I think he could still get his, 16, 17, 18 shots a game if he really wants it, because they need offense in Utah, consistent shot creation. Somebody of that mold, but there's not really a lot of wings in the league that would be available for trade, you would think, that are super impactful. because the Clippers have two of the most elite wings on one roster. And then it's like all the other ones are like young guys or guys that are not going to be easy to trade for. So it's like Jeremy Grant should be easier to trade for than other guys, but maybe he's not. I don't know, but that's the ideal type of guy that I can think of off the top of my head. Just like a two-way wing that can create shots and will be a cool second option to Donovan Mitchell.
I just think if you're trying to say, like, to get them over the hump, if Mitchell's your 1 and Jeremy Grant is your 2, I don't think you're a championship contender.
I think
that's why most of the guys
better,
that
though.
I listed, that's why, like, I don't know. I kind of with guys that are like 1Bs, maybe even 1As to Mitchell being a 1B, and they're like kind of tied for whoever's that top guy on any given night. Because I feel like if you were saying Mitchell is the 1 and you're trying to compete for a title, it's pretty much got to be somebody that's just as good as Donovan as your other guy. Because while he is great, I feel like he's not on that top number 1 on a championship team type level.
It's just tough because those guys just aren't available, though. So this team's just they're in purgatory. They're in purgatory.
Well, yeah, it would probably
spot.
Any of these situations that happen is probably Donovan going to the other guy's team, not the other guy coming to Utah.
Yeah. Or you would have to give up Rudy, which say what you want about Rudy, he's still super important to this team, man. Like
he is, and I don't think he would have that much value in a trade just because of his contract. And like he's valuable to Utah, but he is way less valuable to any other organization because Utah have just made this team need Rudy. Like they don't have a defense without him.
Is he $200 million? Is he making that much?
He's 158 guaranteed over the next 5 years. He will be making $38 million next year.
Rudy, he's just one of those like roster limiters, I would call it. It's like a player with a flaw or exploit that limits the things you can put around them. And I think that makes his value a lot lower in trades. It's like when we were just talking about like the Fox Halliburton thing, because Halliburton fits so much better with everybody. That's probably what made him look more enticing in a trade, and that's probably why they traded him, even if it was still stupid.
Hey, that's a perfect segue because we got to talk about this, man. We have to talk about this. First off, Kings fans just need to be realistic with themselves. You guys lost this trade.
You are not happy with my video this week. They are not liking it.
Bro, somebody was in my comments about my Tyrese video, which I dropped like 2 weeks ago, was really arguing with me that they won this trade. And he was like, Tyrese is not going to be that good. I'm like, bro, it's okay to be a fan. It's also okay to admit that your team made a very bad trade. You guys lost this trade in the long term, most likely, and you're probably losing it in the short term because you're not even going to make the play-in. Like, come on, man. The Kings, this has to be the worst front office in all of sports. They're worse than the Pelicans. They're worse than the Detroit Lions. I don't know anything about hockey, but they're probably worse than every team in hockey.
My team in hockey is rough, but it's close. It's close.
Man, this team is just terrible, bro. Like, you made this trade, all these moves at the deadline to buy in for the play-in, and you're not even going to make the play-in, bro. You're not making it. The Pelicans are significantly better than the Kings right now.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
It is.
So embarrassing.
It is. It's just been so many years of tough decisions. It's tough, man. Like when you had your one, like they've only had one top 3 pick since they last made the playoffs, which is quite surprising. And that was Marvin Bagley. When you miss on that big of a pick, you get a top 2 pick. It's tough to come back from. And they've drafted relatively well since then, thankfully. But then you trade away the guy that wanted to be there. That was your main piece in Halliburton. And Sabonis is a fine player, but you now got 2 years to get in the play-in. I don't expect Sabonis to re-sign unless there's just no market for him and he re-signs in Sacramento for a supermax. I don't see it. Like, I don't go into next year and look at Sacramento and say this is a top 10 team in the West. Like, it's just not.
Hey, I don't want to make this sound like a smaller deal. I don't want to make it sound like a smaller deal than it actually is, but Zion's returning to the Pelicans soon. He's like back in the building at least, doing some stuff there. And that's probably going to keep the Pelicans even like more better than the Kings than they already are. The Lakers I'm sorry, the Sacramento Kings are not passing the Lakers. No matter how bad the Lakers get, LeBron James is not going to be below Sacramento in the standings.
I mean,
It
they're
could
even
be LeBron and like 14 2K generics, and they're still going to be better than the Sacramento Kings. And even if they make the 10 seed, they're losing the first game. They're losing the first game.
They're not even better than the Portland Trailblazers, Gabe. Like, they're not even
Anthony
the 11th
Simons.
seed.
Anthony Simons is better than their whole franchise.
Like, bro, the Kings are actually the 13th seed. This team is so embarrassing, man. So
They're on a
embarrassing.
collision course. They're on a collision course with Seattle, man. They're going to Seattle, Vegas.
Seattle doesn't
Kansas
even deserve
City,
this.
Louisville. So they're going somewhere. I don't know where they're going. We might have a 29-team league.
Look,
they might be going down to the G.
I feel so bad for Kings fans because, bro, it has
Welcome
been
to basketball hell.
I don't blame him for
Welcome
being
to
in
basketball
denial,
hell.
wanting to think it's a good trade. I don't blame him.
Look,
If you do a win now trade and you get worse. You did a win now trade and you got worse.
4-6 in their last 10 games.
Now, literally the only thing that can still hinge it on is the fact that the Bulls made the Vucevic trade last year, continued to not be good and then came out the next year. But they got a crazy plan, DeMar DeRozan. The Kings are not getting a DeMar DeRozan level player that proceeds to play crazy the following season, along with the two players they already have in place playing pretty well. Obviously, Vucevic hasn't been great this season, but you know what I mean.
I think Vucevic
They're not doing it
better than people are giving him credit for. He's been fine.
Yeah, especially start of the year was rough, but after the first 20 or so games, he's been okay.
Bro,
defense has been the best it's ever been as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the Kings can do to salvage this at all, man. They just once again added to the long list of terrible decisions that this front office has made over the last decade and a half. You could go through a rabbit hole and go through all of the bad draft decisions they've made, all the bad trades, coaching decisions, hirings, firings, and everything. There's probably a long, long, long list somewhere on the internet about the Kings making mistakes.
They fired the best coach they've had in the past 10 years after the best season they've had in the past 10 years. And then hired Luke Walton.
Luke Walton, bro.
What
that
only
season?
thing you can do is sell the team. Yeah. You just need to sell the team. I'm sorry. If this playoff drought extends to 20, bro, I know the other teams enjoy having a laughing stock, so to be we're not the worst. But you got to step in and say, hey, you're not competitive. You haven't been competitive for 2 decades. We got to do something about this. That's a problem.
Yeah.
I know,
one playoff appearance, bro. That is ridiculous. I know the West has been so good at certain times. 50-win teams were 8 seeds at one point. But dog, you can't get one playoff appearance in 15 years.
To make a comparison, in football, the Bills didn't make the playoffs for 17 years straight.
Yeah.
But then they came out and now they're a perennial playoff contender. But number one, it's a lot easier to rebuild in football. You can put together 1-year turnarounds a lot easier. I mean, we literally saw that this year. But that's a sport where it's harder to make the playoffs. That at that time when they broke their playoff drought, 12 teams made the playoffs in that league. And it's now when 16 out of 30 teams, you can be below the top half of the league and still be an 8 seed in a conference. And now with the play-in, you just have to be in the top 2/3 of the league, and you have at least some sort of postseason play. It's ridiculous. It's funny we're talking about Sacramento because it's getting ridiculous, man.
Hey, shout out to Boogie, man. I don't know how he got
31?
this far.
31.
Hey, I love seeing Boogie succeed, man, and I hope the Bucks really regret this decision. I know they got Serge, but I hope they regret this decision, man. Let my guy go after he was playing great basketball for them. But yeah, what do y'all think about Denver? We kind of talked about him earlier, but if MPJ and Jamal Murray do come back, could make them an interesting team once we get to the postseason. What do y'all think?
They're giving opposing centers nightmares, literal nightmares. You're telling me you have Nikola Jokic, literally at worst the second best center in the NBA, the last year MVP, so still the reigning MVP until they crown a new one. And then the backup can drop a 30-piece? And, yeah, he's not going to do that consistently, but the man can produce on the offensive end. And so it's like, bro, what do we have here? This team has so many offensive pieces. I think if Jamal comes back, if then MPJ is back, MPJ might be back to what he was doing last year. Maybe he's just more comfortable as that third option. Seemed to not be doing so well as a second option. Now, that could say maybe he was playing with the injury that was nagging him and bothering him. But if Jamal Murray comes back, a man well-known, very well-known to step his game up in the playoffs, that's going to be dangerous. Not to mention, this core together, they've played 4 7-game series together. So if things get deep, that's a team you can't count out. If you're going 6 or 7, Denver is scary because they know what to do when they get into those deep series. So I know I was still calling the Warriors a contender, but if that ends up being a 3-6 matchup, you better watch out. Because if Jamal comes back playing like Jamal, night. You got to keep your foot on the gas or night. Do I think they're going to win the West? Absolutely not. But do I think they could give people problems and have an upset? They could have 2 upsets. If they're the 6th seed, right, and they somehow upset the Warriors, I could see them going in and upsetting Memphis. I could definitely see it. Jamal has more time back. MPJ has more time back, gelling more together. They just have the momentum of beating, the Golden State Warriors. Yeah. Now, are they beating the Suns? No. The Suns and the Nuggets played last year. I know Jamal wasn't in, but, bro, Chris Paul torched that defense. It was bad. It was a sweep, if I remember correctly. So do I think that this Nuggets core is beating this Suns core? No. But do I think that the Suns could do something nasty? Yes.
I'm really high on Denver. I just don't think this year is their year. Even if Jamal's back, even if MPJ is back, they're both coming back from significant injuries. It's going to take a bit of time. I think they're probably a first-round exit. Unless they move up to the 5 seed, maybe they can do something with Utah. But next year, yeah, I'm really high on them. I think they'll be a legit title contender next year. But Jamal Murray will be after not playing basketball for a significant amount of time, a significant lower body injury at that. MPJ, we know he's had struggles with back injuries. He's probably going to come back into the lineup and play 10, 15 minutes a night for a while. He's going to have to take some time to get back in. So I like this team. I think they're still going to be a tough first-round series, but next year's their year as far as I'm concerned. They'll still be good, but it's going to be tough to get chemistry back, to get MPJ and Jamal Murray back healthy and conditioned and in basketball shape and playing well. I think it's a lot to ask in 15, 20 games at most before the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. The good thing is this core is pretty much intact. I think they even extended Aaron Gordon. So, they're pretty much intact. Everybody's going to be back. Health is just the biggest issue for this team, obviously. Because I was in the camp last year. I thought if they stayed healthy, I think that was the team that's going to win the Western Conference. Just how good Jokic was. And we know, like Gabe said, Jamal Murray's a playoff killer. And MPJ was playing comfortably as that third option. But then injuries hit. And obviously it did not work out that way. So hopefully, if I was this team, I would just be comfortable with however this season plans out. Let Murray fully recover. Let MPJ have a full offseason to recover. And just come back next year. And like you said, next year should be this season. That's the window for this team, like you said. So I don't think they should rush these guys back. But if they do, it can make it a little more interesting in the West, maybe. But then those guys got to ramp it back up. After not playing for so long, it could be a lot to ask.
It's not worth re-aggravating their injuries this season.
It's
not worth
it. It's that Warriors matchup that really intrigues me. I would still take the Warriors, but I'm sitting here thinking about it, right? You have Jamal Murray back on the basketball court. He's probably being guarded by Steph Curry on ball. or Klay Thompson off an Achilles injury.
Jokic is
Even if
giving
he's
him
not
hell.
100% Jamal Murray, the Warriors' defensive guards do not look great right now. Like,
Gary Payton, man.
hey,
He's out
they do
injured
have
now
Gary
too.
Payton. Gary Payton, he's gonna have to take that starting spot or something.
The mitten.
I
think that's
think,
what they
yeah,
call it.
Jokic, bro, especially, I don't know what Draymond's status is right now, but if he's not back in the full swing,
Even
Jokic
if he
is
is.
giving them problem. Yeah, I mean, Draymond's a great defender, but on ball, one-on-one against Jokic, great offense usually beats great defense.
Definitely interesting for sure. Yeah, the West is it's wild as it always is. What teams have y'all been like really impressed with lately in the Western Conference?
Minnesota's been really good. Like what I've been
Yeah,
seeing from
Minnesota
them.
having a positive record this far into the season it's new. It's a culture shift. It's
Yes.
unexpected. They've had hot starts so many years, and then they'll just lose like 15 in a row. And then Kat literally mentioned it, and they played a lot better. A team I really want to shout out, the Clippers. Clip gang or don't bang, apparently. These boys, nope. Like, Paul George went out, we said, hey, the season's over. That's it. But now they still have a winning record, still the 8th seed. And say Paul George comes back before the end of the year, hey, they could get a playoff spot through that play-in tournament. They could do it without him, to be honest with you.
That team is like, they just remind me so much of a March Madness type of team, like a Cinderella, because it's just like you expect them to be down and out, but they just find ways to win games with whoever's on the court. Shout
Tyronn
out,
Lue.
that's what I was about to say. Shout out Ty Lue, man. He really changed that culture drastically because it looked terrible after the bubble, but then last season, especially with the playoff run, everything that they went up against, Ty Lue really shifted the culture for the Clippers, and that's why they're probably going to make the playoffs, which is that's a big time W. Even if Paul George was healthy this season, I think that's still a big time win for them.
It'll be a win for them next year too. They've got a lot of young guys that have gotten more opportunity because of some of these injuries. Talk about Brandon Boston having some good opportunities. Amir Coffey's had his moments. Luke Kennard has gotten more minutes and has looked really well. So that's only going to help them moving into the next year as well. Kind of like when Golden State had their injuries for a couple of years. Some of these young guys now, when you look at guys like Damian Lee, Toscano Anderson, Jordan Poole, these guys that started to get minutes to actually be able to learn the system. And the Clippers are kind of getting the same thing this year.
It's just something about this team. It's just like the culture they've set and the way they play. They just do whatever it takes, it seems like. It's just I feel like the scariest team is the team that you don't know what the heck is about to happen. Like, it's so hard to key in because if you look at this team, bro, you really don't know who's going to have a big night.
It's almost a similar identity to this Clippers team that was an 8 seed, if I'm not mistaken, before they got Kawhi and Paul George. Like, just a bunch of hardworking guys, really good defense.
That was with Shea and them boys.
Beverly, and like that was just a hardworking, good identity, tough-nosed team.
But yeah, I think it really shows that Reggie Jackson can really be the point guard with Kawhi and PG.
Definitely.
Like, he can really be their third. And they keep Morris around, keep Terrence Mann around, and
got Norm
so many other pieces they've got. Like, I think they definitely developed a lot of guard play with their top players out. I think Zubac has shown what he is. He's shown for a long time what he is. Hartenstein's honestly played pretty well as a backup big.
He's been good. They've been good.
They've been putting a lot of good things together, and it's like, talk about maximizing your opportunities. You said, okay, this isn't our year. They did just about as well as they can do.
Sure. A team I've been impressed with lately, the Pelicans, since the CJ trade, they've been playing really, really good basketball. And with Zion coming back, like we mentioned earlier, I don't know. It could be interesting. Maybe they can sneak into the playoffs, maybe win a couple playing games. Who knows? It just makes the West and the whole league just that much more compelling. I'm glad to see Zion's looking like he's on track to play at some point, which is definitely a good thing. But the CJ addition that was one of the biggest trades of the deadline that I think kind of got, swept under the rug because of the James Harden trade and, Ben Simmons moving teams. But this was a very good deal by the Pelicans, and David Griffin might have saved his job, honestly. He might have saved his job with that move.
Yeah,
Hey,
definitely.
they've been a winning team since that 1-12 start. They're a better team than 27-36.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Shout out Jackson Hayes as well. Moved into the starting lineup, played power forward. He's been good since.
He's been playing good, which is crazy. Shout out to Cincinnati's finest. Shout out Jackson Hayes. But yeah, like you said earlier, Devin, this has been a wild week of basketball. A very
Really
crazy
has.
week of basketball.
Really is.
Man,
Bit over
this
a
has
month
been
now to the
almost an hour.
playoffs. It's going to be a good end.
We ain't even talked about Cam Johnson, and it's been an hour.
Hey, a great week for Carolina basketball, so got to clap it up, man. You love to see it. Shout out Cam Johnson.
100%.
Even better than Kobe White. Kobe White said, Cam Johnson got drafted that high. He should have been drafted higher than Kobe.
Yeah, that's crazy. Facts.
The bottom of the Eastern Conference is definitely still pretty tight. There isn't necessarily teams that are showing off as much as they are in the bottom of the West. But what are your guys' favorite teams on the run right now in the Eastern Conference?
Aside from the Celtics, man, this is probably such a cop-out answer, but Philly, I really enjoy watching them. Tyrese Maxey as the third option looks amazing. James Harden looks like James Harden. And Embiid doesn't have to put up 40 and 15 every single night for them to win games. The only thing that worries me about them is like Tobias right now. But if Maxey's playing this good, maybe they don't need Tobias to be, 18 points per game. But he seems like he's really struggling to kind of find his rhythm, which maybe that could come into a factor in a playoff series. But right now, I really like this team. The defense has been pretty good. Watching them has been fun, even though they do shoot a lot of free throws, but that's fine. I'm cool with that. They've been playing really good, and they honestly look a lot better than I anticipated coming off of this big trade.
Hey, I might become the new president of the Tyrese Maxey fan club. I don't know why I just like watching him play so much. It's probably just a classic speedy guard that gets a lot of buckets thing. Always exciting, but something about him, bro. He is special. And the way that he has only improved since adding another ball dominant guard to the equation, that's it just feels weird. You would think, okay, their backcourt's been a little thin this season. The guy who is their point guard, really their primary ball handler is what I mean to say. He wasn't playing the whole season. So you think, okay, he's the main backcourt guy getting touches. Obviously, he's going to have some big numbers. But nah, he's showing now it's legit. It wasn't just because there was a thin backcourt. He has James Harden playing next to him and is still putting up really good numbers. Now, you could say that alleviates more of the defensive pressure on him, and that could be why his numbers have been so great as of recent. But whatever it is, I am beyond impressed. And it really doesn't feel like a duo. It feels like a big three the way they've been playing. I see all the Harden and Embiid, but Maxey is crazy. Another team I'm very impressed generally with the Heat. I think my biggest thing with them is they just always seem to take care of business no matter the circumstance. We've talked about every team's dealt with injury, and the two teams that have probably dealt with it the best is Miami and Phoenix. And we talk constantly about how great Phoenix is. So I want to give Miami some of their flowers. They played a month of basketball without Bam. They had some time without Jimmy. Kyle Lowry hasn't played in a while, and they still just managed to always take care of things. They did blow a pretty big one against the Bucks, but hey, you're playing against Milwaukee on the road. Giannis playing great. Drew Holiday was playing great. Chris made some clutch shots. Sometimes the game just falls the way it does, but for the most part, it's they just beat the Sixers. Yeah, it was on a back-to-back. Still did. Beat the Nets recently. Beat the Bulls recently. I mean, these are the teams you're going to be contending with in the conference. Whatever you want to say about how those teams have been playing recently, the Heat, even when they're down, man, they always contend with the best of the conference. And so it's like you can never count this team out no matter what, which just goes to show how good Spoelstra is, how good this team's depth and player development is, and just Jimmy is a culture setter. Ever since he stepped into that building, this team has been a force to be reckoned with. They did have a misstep last season's playoffs, but, I mean, if you lose to the eventual champions, you lose to the eventual champions.
Yeah, definitely. Miami have definitely been good. And as you mentioned, they've struggled a lot with injuries. Sure, some other teams have as well, but the fact that they have been able to get to the number one seed in the East through it all is a testament to their culture, their ethic, and how good they've been able to do with some of the depth pieces they've found and how well they've performed. Talking about guys like Gabe Vincent here at 7, Max Strus. Those guys have performed very well. And briefly, just back to Philly for a second, it's interesting to see as well how good Maxey has been with Harden now in the backcourt for a guy that's not like a traditional off-ball catch-and-shoot three-point guy. He likes to attack the rim, has a really good floater game, and yet he still fit in really well off the ball with another guard. So it's nice to see that that's not an exclusive thing where you just need to be a catch-up spotting shooter around a guy like James Harden. You can have a guy like Maxey who can still attack the rim through that ball movement and creation that James Harden has. So full kudos to him. I got to give a shout out to the Pistons, which is not something that I often do, but one, they continue to beat the Raptors, which annoys the heck out of me, but fair play. They apparently know what to do to beat us. But this has been their best stretch of basketball all year. They've won 2 in a row. They've won 5 of their last 10. Cade's been playing really well. Marvin Bagley has played some of the best basketball he's played in the last few years. I think that move was great for him and great for Detroit. Sadiq Bey has been playing quite well. Jeremy Grant has been playing quite well. There's a lot of positive signs here in Detroit, and there's probably still a couple of years away from being a team that we look at as a playoff team, but kudos to them. They've been playing well, and hopefully Marvin Bagley can continue to play well as well and have a bit of a future here in Detroit. It'd be nice to see him pan out a bit.
Yeah, that's a team that I made a video earlier in the season about them. I think they're just doing the rebuild like how it should be done. Just stockpiling young talent, taking chances on guys that other situations didn't work out for them. And they got their building block in Cade. And I think Cade still somehow not being talked a lot about as among like the rookies, which he's been phenomenal. But I think he's going to be on that tier like how we look at some of the best young stars right now. I think he's going to reach that tier within the next few years, man. I think he's really special, and he's going to show it soon, man. And I think Detroit, after what happened with the Stan Van Gundy era and them giving guys back contracts, like, you know, Drummond being there, Blake Griffin, they got out of that. And I think they're slowly but surely rebuilding this team the right way. And I'm excited for their future.
Yeah, I agree. And they started that rebuild with a Luke Kennard trade that got them a first-round pick and having to essentially just get rid of Drummond and Griffin. So The fact they are where they are, kudos to them. They've done well.
The Pistons, yeah. I feel like I've mentioned several times on this podcast how great their front office has been. They're winning at the greatest time too. The season's pretty much already over for them. It's like, you know, you're gonna be in contention for the number 1 pick, top 3 pick, regardless, somewhere in there. And so the fact that you're winning games now is like, cool, let's set some winning culture as we move towards next season. Go out on a high note and say, okay, we can be some good teams in this league with this core. And as we continue to build it and add another top 5 pick, we could really be something special soon. Because I think when teams stay bad for a really long time, that's when you start to see bad cultures set. That's when you start to see a lot of bad habits, and there starts to be a lot of turmoil. But the fact that they said, okay, we're going to blow it up, get some good pieces, and then we're going to go back to being good and set a good tone. I like that. One more thing. As I continue to stand the heat, one more thing I want to bring up about them that I think is really underrated. They only have 5 road games left. They have played a lot more road games than home games. 9 of their next 10 games are at home. And these games, like, they play the Rockets, then the Suns come into town, Cavs come into town. But then in this, like, stretch, they have Pistons at home, they have Thunder at home, Knicks at home, Kings at home. They've played a lot of their toughest games. They've played almost all of their road games, and they're still the 1 seed right now. This team is insane to me. The fact that you're the 1 seed and have people out, you've played away way more than you've played at home. It's like an 8 or 9 game difference from like home games to away games. I stand the Heat, man.
Honestly, that's a team that I don't want to see in a 7-game series, man. The culture is just super elite. My bad. The culture is just super elite, like, and they just find they find guys out of nowhere, bro. Like their scouting staff has to be the best in the league. The Raptors also do a very good job at this too, just finding guys like out of nowhere, like Gabe Vincent. Where did he come from? Don't know. Max Strus, I never heard of him until like last season. Yurt 7 had a very good stretch of games when Bam was out. Like they just find people out of nowhere. They just find guys, undrafted guys. They do it every single year, and they come in, they produce, they play really good basketball, and ultimately they help them win critical games when it matters the most.
Hey, people didn't know the difference between the Martin twins a year ago. Now I feel like people know Caleb the better one because he's a part of that Heat culture.
Definitely.
Tyler Hero broke off of his sophomore slump. He's back to being exactly what we expected him to be.
Yes. Making me look like I know how to predict awards, because that's one that I did predict him winning 6th Man of the Year, which he should win it. And every other one that I predicted was wildly off. You feel me? But hey, Tyler Hero, he's saving me, man. He's saving me. Yeah. Definitely. The East is, I don't know, but still, as good as the Heat have been, I don't know if they've really separated themselves as like, we're the best team in the conference. I'm still not so sure about that.
I think it's the Heat and Philly. Like, I really think, I don't know, man. It just is not looking like it's the Bucks' year. They could obviously pull something out. I think when you have a player of Giannis's caliber, you're always in it. He's reached that level of respect for me. I don't think you can ever count Giannis out of a series. But, like, I think it's not the Bulls' year. The Celtics, while they've been a lot better, there's still enough inconsistency to be a little worried. Cavs, to me, are just a little bit too young. I don't think the Raptors have the top-end talent to do it. And then the Nets should have the talent and the ability. But they're a 9 seed right now. And so it's hard for me to say they're, like, on that top tier of the conference right now. So to me, it's really those top 2. I think it's going to be one of those 2 that come out of this conference at the end of the day. And to me, the Heat have the best chance because the Sixers and the Bucks right now would be playing each other in the second round. So if that standing holds, now if the Bucks fall back to 4 or 5, and then it's Heat Bucks 3 in the the second round, that would be very fun to watch and very interesting because the Heat took 1 round convincingly, the Bucks took 1 round convincingly. It would be a sight to see. But if the Bucks and Sixers play each other in the second round, I think the Heat go all the way to the finals.
I'll take.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Yeah. The Bulls, I'm kind of concerned. I can't lie. I'm actually kind of concerned about the Bulls. Like the only team I could like see them beating in the top 6 is like Cleveland. And
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
they struggle too much against good teams.
Like, no bias, I don't think that they could. I think they could beat the Celtics, but I don't think it's like. I would probably take the Celtics in that series. It'll probably be like a 7-game series, but I think I would take Boston.
I would say the same. I think the Bulls can definitely beat Boston, especially with like if Zoe and Caruso are in full swing. But if I was a betting man, I'm probably putting my money on Boston.
Yeah, I would as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned about the Bulls, man. I know they're dealing with injuries and stuff, which is kind of big, but they still got the top end talent on their roster. And man, it's kind of a theme if you can't beat the good teams. Like, it's cool that you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, but you got to at least be like batting 500 against the great teams. And they're like, what, 2-18 or
2-18,
something like that?
Or something like that as of a week ago. Yeah.
That's bad. It's bad. I don't know. We'll see, though. They've been struggling. The Cavs have been struggling. And it seems like everybody else in the East is trending upwards. And those 2 teams are kind of on the downswing right now.
I mean, to me, the fact that the Cavs are like in the playoffs as like an actual like secure seed, not a play-in seed, I think that's already a W of a season. So even if they start to hit a little bit of a wall, maybe Mobley hits a little bit of a rookie wall, they start to throw some more things at like Darius and Jarrett, which Darius Garland has still been playing great. I know he was out for a little bit, but even recently in their losses, he's played very well. They might throw some things at them to slow them down a little bit, but the fact that this team has come this far this season and is still pretty young and has a lot of room to grow, W season. So it's not something I'm concerned about because I didn't expect them to contend this year anyways. Still exceeding expectations to the highest degree.
100%.
But with the age of the Bulls and the stage they're at, yeah, I know they didn't really come into the season as a title contender, but I feel like they should have been at least a little bit more competitive against the top end.
And it's just like, are we going to see this version of DeMar DeRozan next year or the year after that? I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure because he's getting older. So it's like, kind of got to capitalize on what you got right now. This is probably the best version of DeMar that you will get in this 3-year deal. And the fact that they just can't beat good teams is just not a good sign because when you get to the postseason, especially where they're about to be seeded, most likely, you're going to play a good team no matter who you're going up against. So it's highly concerning. But like you said about the Cavs, it is nice that they're having a successful season. But they made the trade at the deadline, the Caris LeVert deal. I feel like that was kind of like, okay, we want to at least be super competitive in the playoffs, like try and win a series. And now it's like, I don't know if they're going to win a series. The biggest problem with this team is like health. It's just like their guys are not all healthy at the same time, which is definitely unfortunate. But I don't know. Those teams, it's not the best time to be not playing your best basketball. I'll say that much.
Yeah, definitely. On the point of DeMar, I think the one good thing is for him is that he's kind of molded his game over the years to rely a lot less on athleticism. So between his finesse and his footwork and just his intelligence of the game, he'll probably still be fine for the rest of this contract. But I do agree this is probably the best basketball we're going to see from DeMar. It's tough because I didn't think the Bulls were going to be this good. But at the same time, they have committed a lot to this group. So you would like to think that they can at least be at least a second round appearance regular, which doesn't look to be a lock right now. So it remains to be seen.
Well, I think that going forward, Zach LaVine can continue to improve as much as DeMar could decline. Because really, DeMar's been so crazy recently. Zach LaVine hasn't had to do as much. Obviously, he still had great performances, but he hasn't. Like, it's not relied on him to do as much. So it's like, if he comes out and he starts playing crazy, I mean, they could definitely do something. They have the talent to compete. The fact that they're missing their two best defensive guards is really shooting them in the foot. It's like, it's one of those things where I was talking about, like, with the Warriors early in the episode. It's like, it's hard to like decipher what they are now because of the injury factors, and like we saw them be great while those pieces were in place, but also with them, their record is so egregiously terrible against the good teams that you can still take somewhat of a takeaway and say, okay, yeah, this is still pretty concerning.
I did not realize Zach LaVine was only 26 years old. He seems so much older for some reason. I don't know why. And I also just found out I had the exact same birthday as Ayo Dosunmu. Like same day, same year, same age. Didn't know that. Learn something new every day.
Hey, Ayo Dosunmu, man. He might get that all rookie first team. He might get it as the second guard.
Interest. I think rookie team is not positional, if I'm not mistaken.
If it was, I would say him, Cade, Scotty, Mobley.
Nah. Giddy has to be first
Giddy would
team,
be
bro.
there, yeah.
You think
Yeah.
Giddy?
Giddy would
has
definitely
been
get
really
it.
good. Okay.
He's won every rookie of the month in the West, bro. He's been crazy.
That's just because so many of the great rookies are in the East. But
true.
Yeah.
Let's see. I would probably go
I'll give
Scotty,
Giddy the – Ayo's probably second team.
Scotty, Mobley, Cade, Giddy. Who would be the fifth guy?
Franz, maybe?
Probably France.
Probably I forgot about France. Yeah, probably France. Dang, Jalen Green might be second
And
team.
then you'd go, Jalen, Io,
Would
Herb
Jalen Green
Jones,
be?
maybe.
Would Jalen Green be any team?
Yeah, Jalen.
He'd be second
Okay,
team.
now
He'd be
calm
second
down,
team.
man. Calm down.
Let me chill. But
What if they didn't? Did RJ Barrett not make? He's been amazing lately too. Got to
Yes.
mention
RJ
that.
Barrett doesn't make any kind of team, bro. I don't understand,
Did he not make? He didn't make
didn't.
all rookie second team either.
bro.
That's
They still make
ridiculous.
like top 25, like top whatever under 25, and do not put
He's
RJ
not
on
on
the
it.
list. Like
I
the
don't
man is
get
dropping 40-point games.
I don't get
People have
it.
given up so early on RJ. Like, he's still 21.
Look,
get it.
everybody, we all know I don't like Duke basketball at all. But once they get to the league, I can respect him. And I really I think RJ, even when he was a rookie, I mean, he wasn't great, but you're telling me he couldn't make all rookie second team? He's still putting up like 13, 14 a night for a bad Knicks team.
The best player on your team is from Duke, so
I mean, yeah.
You gotta be.
True, but it's like I don't get the RJ hate. Like, why does he get so much slander? Then when he hoops, nobody gives him his credit. It's just ridiculous.
I don't even feel like it's slander. I feel like people just don't talk about him. And he plays for the Knicks.
Yeah.
Like all Knicks slander is basically Julius Randle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say RJ is getting slandered. It's just like RJ is not.
He's neglected.
He's not getting. Yeah, he's just not getting that attention. And
yeah.
I get that the team has not been very successful, but that has never stopped us before from acknowledging like RJ recently has probably been as good as like Zach LaVine was when the Bulls were bad. I think that's fair to say.
That's a good comparison. I'm trying to look at his numbers because I feel like
I know Zach got some hate. Devin Booker used to get some hate. Now Devin Booker then was probably better than RJ is now, but then players like that would play on like struggling teams, they get some hate, but like at least they would get attention. And the Knicks have a giant fan base.
His last 4 games, dropped 46 against Miami. He had 24 against Philly. Then he dropped 30 against Philly, and then he put up a stinker against the Suns. But he's been very good lately, especially over this last, I would say 3 weeks or so. He's been really good. His numbers on the season look fine. I'm in the camp of this is his team. I think this should be his team moving forward, man. Julius Randle, what he did last year, it was great. But we're not going to see that version of Julius Randle ever again. And they gave him a super bag because of that season, which sucks. But, yeah, the honeymoon phase is definitely over with the Julius Randle Knicks success. And now it's like we're back to reality of this is Julius Randle. This is who he is.
Yeah, they're going to have an interesting offseason to figure out because RJ's eligible for an extension. You got Randall's contract and whether he stays around. And the 2 highest paid guys on this team are guys that are arguably bad. Well, not arguably, are bad contracts right now in Randall and Fournier. They could be a team that has an interest in offseason. Mitchell Robinson's going to be a UFA as well. So they got some decisions to make.
He's unrestricted?
Yeah, because he was a second-round pick. So he was a 2-2.
I really hope they jump in the draft and take just a star. That RJ Barrett, and then if they draft a star, because RJ's still young enough to be paired with somebody else. Definitely still young enough. It's his 3rd year. But him with just some other explosive young guy that brings some excitement to the city, I feel like they could get back to doing some pretty good things. Because they still got good pieces. I think it's just it looked like they rebuilt really fast because of how great Randall was. But with that kind of showing itself to be a bit of a fluke now, yeah, this team is kind of where it was before in terms of the rebuild's sake. 13 games under 500 right now. This is probably where they should have been in year 3. It just sucks that – it almost sucks that they were good enough last year to where their pick was really bad. Now that production of Randall is not maintained, it's they missed the extra year they could have rebuilt to be a more sustainable team going forward. But hey, if they get somebody else to put along RJ and keep Mitchell Robinson in town, a couple other valuable players for them to stay in there, they're not too many pieces away from being solid again. I don't think all hope is lost in New York. For this season, all hope is lost. But, like, as far as long-term plans go for building around RJ, you're fine, I believe.
But the Knicks, they actually draft pretty well. When it's outside the lottery, they do a pretty good job of drafting. So maybe it's just a down year for them, potentially. But I don't know. Like Devin said, this offseason can be very enticing for them, because maybe Tibbs is gone. He might be gone after this season. Maybe you try to move Julius Randle. I don't know, man. This team could look drastically different next year. I'm interested, but I don't know. I feel like they got some decent young pieces. I think RJ I don't know if he's a franchise guy, but he can be a building block moving forward, like a part of, the future of the franchise. Give Cam Reddish more minutes. I don't see why you traded a first-round pick to get him, to not play him. It's just so weird, bro. The season's lost. You're not making the plan. Just go ahead, develop your young talent, and see what happens in the offseason.
I mean, they have plenty of solid pieces. It's like Obi Toppin can be a starting forward. If you somehow decide to move on from Julius Randle, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's possible. But if you did, it's like if you really hit big on a draft pick, which you definitely can at like a 7 spot. I mean, guys that have been drafted at like 6, 7, let's not even talk about some of those names. But like Mitchell Robinson, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and then bring in like another star guard, you could set up a pretty solid core.
Do they have
Like,
their
I
pick
don't
this
think
year?
that's bad at all.
I'm not sure if they do, to be honest.
Or is that going to Atlanta?
I don't see why they – did they trade a first-round pick?
I feel like because I saw something that they might not have their pick this year. But maybe I'm wrong. They might have their pick.
Their first-round pick is – it looks like it's top 18 protected. Pick would defer to 2023 because the pick is currently in the top 18.
Okay.
So they need to hit on a pick this year because it looks like they're not going to get their pick for next year.
All right, that's decent. Okay.
They still have a Dallas first coming in next year as well. Not that that'll be a top end pick, but
this team, they do better late first round anyways.
The way Spencer Dinwiddie's been. Don't y'all sleep on Dinwiddie.
That trade's looking great right now.
That's my guy.
I told you, boys.
That's a lot better.
He could be nice for a team. You guys said, I don't know if he's a good NBA player anymore. I said, nah, Spence.
I didn't say all that. I just said this is a bad year for him.
Yeah.
Not a good.
I was high on Dinwiddie, and it's looking like a hot take. It's looking like a hot take.
The only player I've said openly that is no longer a good NBA player is DeAndre Jordan. That's the only guy I've been adamantly saying he's not an NBA player anymore.
I said it about Davis Bertans. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my God, he's had okay moments with the Mavs.
Yeah, he's been fine.
But the way Luka's so good, he doesn't need that much help to make it super
not in the regular season. Not in the regular season, he don't need that much help. But like we see how it goes in the playoffs. He needs.
But in the postseason, like those first 2 games in LA last year, he was getting like so much. Like if he gets production from his others, like Tim Hardaway Jr. was shooting the lights out, Maxi Kleber was shooting the lights out. Like if he's getting production from guys like that, himself can like swing a series because he's just that good. So I'm interested to see like whoever matches up with them in the first round, he's giving them absolute hell.
Yeah, we've yet to see him play in a playoff series against a team that doesn't have 2 of the top 5 wings in the league.
And he was still torching them, bro. And then he was headhunting Pat Bev last year. Luka's special. If they can get some type of performances like this from Dinwiddie in the postseason, they could upset. I don't want to say upset because they're probably going to be like a 5 seed, but they could beat a team in the first round. depending on who
Yeah,
they
they could
match
be
up with.
I think it's
Utah.
fair they beat the Jazz for sure. Yeah. And
So,
Brunson's better than he was last year. Like you say,
Yeah.
Dinwiddie there now. If those guys perform, I think there's a chance for sure.
Nobody believes in the Jazz on this podcast.
I ain't got no belief in them. Regular season, I'll count them in as a top 4 seed. After that,
I lost hope after last year because I was kind of saying, like, I'm kind of bought in. I think they can make a deep run, and then they lost in the second round. So I'm done. I'm kind of giving them the Bucks treat. I'm kind of giving them the Bucks treatment that I gave the Bucks last year. I don't really believe in y'all until y'all prove me otherwise.
They were going against playoff P in a big time game with Kawhi injured, all the leverage in the world.
At home.
What did they do? They got beat. They got sent to Cancun by Terrence Mann. All respect to Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann should not be swinging a playoff series.
What college did he go to?
You got me messed up.
Florida State.
Florida State. Man, that just looks terrible on me.
It does.
Love me some Florida State products, man. Shout out to Jalen Ramsey. Shout out to Scotty Barnes. Shout out to Dalvin Cook. Shout out to Patrick Williams. Shout out to a lot of people.
John Isaac. Is he ever playing basketball again?
Probably not. Ever since he didn't kneel. Let me not get too out of pocket. But ever since he didn't kneel in the bubble, that man has not played basketball.
Bro, the bubble took some people's souls. Like, we haven't seen TJ Warren since the bubble.
Yeah.
John Isaac. Like, there's so many guys that went into the bubble and did not come out, bro.
And John Isaac's already got $70 million guaranteed. He's chilling. He's good. I hope we see him play, though. He was looking really good before he got injured.
Bro, I feel like we talked about this last week. I don't know.
Did.
Maybe we did.
I like John.
He was really he was in his bag in the bubble, bro. Like, he was hitting tween step backs. I'm like, okay. Then he got hurt. I'm like, dang. Shout out to Markelle for coming back, though, man. I love to see him coming back. Jumper looks pretty decent. The midi was going down. I think he's just a guy that everybody roots for, and hopefully he continues to find his way in the league.
We're an hour and a half in, and we just ended up on Orlando talk, bro. This podcast is crazy.
Can't say we don't give love to the small markets.
Facts. We talked about the Pistons for like 5 minutes.
Bro, I live in Ohio. Of course, I'm gonna give love to the small markets.
You know, in the middle of nowhere, Canada. It's got to be done.
I think
that's a fun place to probably wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Talking about the Orlando Magic.
Let us know your picks.
Should Jalen Suggs have been picked ahead of Scotty Barnes?
Let us know. Let us know
down below.
Scotty Barnes has got to be the guy. So if you answer other than that, you're wrong. But nonetheless, let us know what you think. Let us know your contenders for the East and the Western Conference headed into the playoffs. We thank you guys for tuning in and watching again this week. Be sure to leave a like down below, follow, subscribe, wherever you are watching. We appreciate you, and we'll see you guys again next week. Peace.